And that's it.
And
Now
well,
we're
That was
live.
hello.
awesome. That's a cool intro. I liked it.
Thank you. I
It
worked
is.
very, very hard on it.
I mean,
Yeah.
it was really cool. It gave me like I have the an absolute taste for either blood or wine. I'm not sure which
Well,
one.
we're just trying to make sure we hit all aspects of our genre.
It's
I
about
mean,
balance. It's about balance.
it was well played. It's well played.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think Jared would even be impressed with it.
you
I
think
think he
so?
would be too. I think he would be too.
Well, thank
That
you.
guy should
That means
jump
a
on
lot.
here, like, and watch us at least.
He
Yeah,
should.
He's
he
back in New
should.
Orleans, though. You know, it's like
Oh,
Oh, he's probably asleep.
they were gonna have. You're exactly right.
he's probably
He's
it's 2
sleeping
hours
like an
before he
angel.
gets up.
Yeah, exactly. This is like 5 a.m. for me. So like he'll be up in 2 hours, which will be like 7 a.m. for me. You know what I mean? He's like,
Yes.
yeah,
Opposite
yeah,
schedules. He's a night
exactly.
owl.
He's definitely a night owl.
So
Well,
So
we
what's going
have
on, guys?
yeah. Welcome, Bob Mata.
Bob
We had a
Mata.
failure 2 weeks ago because of internet issues, because technology sucks sometimes.
Dude,
But, you know, now
yeah.
we've survived and we've got Bob this week.
I'm
And
here.
we were with Bob last Thursday. Oh,
Mhm.
Friday. So it's very interesting. We tried 3 weeks in a row, Bob.
Yes,
Thursday
it's true.
and Friday and
Yes.
Saturday ish.
That's
Yeah.
true.
No, we didn't
And
see you Saturday.
We
My
did
bad.
see, yeah, we left pretty early Saturday.
oh yeah, you guys were out. Yeah, we crushed an escape room.
We
We
did.
did.
That
We
was the
did.
most amazing. I have told my husband all about that escape room
That was
because
fun.
it
It
was
was so
so
fun.
fun.
It was awesome. Yeah, I think we
I
had like five minutes to spare too,
We
like
did.
which is
yeah.
pretty good, you know.
For like a 4-room escape room. Like there was
Yeah, like a
multiple
legit tough
Yes.
Levels.
escape room. Yeah,
and
it
a
was.
tunnel we had to crawl through.
There was like we had to each break out of separate cells and then meet and
Mhm.
then get through an entire another room and then another room and then crawl through the tunnel and yeah, it was a really good room. It was well
And
done.
play chess,
Cut the
Played
wire
chess, cutting
to turn off the
wires.
alarm. It
read
was
That's
Braille.
right.
it was
Yeah.
Read
yes,
Braille.
read Braille. We did
Yeah,
some amazing tests in that.
it was a good room, man. It was like I've done a bunch of those like prison break ones, and that was definitely the best one I've done. So it was high quality, you know.
So, do you use that as like a two truths and a lie, Bob? Like your secret talent or your guilty pleasure is escape rooms?
Definitely. That
Yeah.
I am like a huge escape room nerd. like anywhere we travel, like the first thing I Google is like to see if they have escape rooms in town because it's like I love going to different towns, because we've basically done everything like around us in Illinois, like literally. So, and like some places will switch rooms out, but those build out on those rooms is like a massive undertaking. So,
Yes.
a lot of times what we do is like if we finish them, you know, anytime I travel, I always look for those rooms. Yeah, I was like as soon as we got into New Orleans, and I was like thinking, I'm like, oh, the girls will like to do this. I'm gonna like,
Yeah.
I always had the evil plan to suck you guys into the escape room.
It
So
didn't take much.
no, I
It was
didn't. You guys were very easy to convince.
Bloody
So that
Mary
was.
at brunch, and we're like, sure, we'll go to an escape room.
And dude, like for like the dollar to value is like you can't beat it. Like there's no
Can't.
better way
No.
to like spend an hour. I
Seriously though, if you get some extra time in Vegas, if you can come a day early, go a day late, stay a day late, whatever. If you can do Meow Wolf, it is worth it. I think the
Oh
tickets were
man,
like
I
50 to
so
70
want to do
bucks.
that. That sounded so cool. Like I didn't even know they had one in Vegas. Like I knew they had one in Denver.
Yeah. There's also one in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Really? Oh, so
Yeah.
when I go hang out with Eric, I'm gonna
Yes.
Mhm.
I'm gonna force him to bring me there because they sound
Yeah.
amazing. It sounds like so cool.
It's massive. I think the one in Vegas is their first one, and then they built the Denver one and then the Santa Fe one. But it's huge. Like I said, we were in there for 4.5 hours, and we were very close to finishing it, but we didn't.
And it's
Really?
just one room, or is it multiple
No,
rooms?
it's an entire warehouse.
So, and a lot
Really?
of people are doing it with you.
A lot of people are doing it all at the same time,
Okay.
but it is very detailed because when you first walk in, it's like a grocery store, but it's all very alien-esque. It's kind of like aliens take over the planet, and there's like tattooed chicken and avocado banana things. It's very
like
it's very
weird
funny.
hybrids of things
Yes.
that
Yeah, but then
do not
you
currently exist on our planet.
exactly. And then you can walk through the cooler, like the freezer section, and go into this whole other world. And then you're like in a separate room where there's some radios and you got to find some computers. You got to go upstairs and downstairs. There's like a four-story
Oh,
slide you can go down.
Oh
Bob, that's
man.
up your
It's
And so
alley.
like the
it's
end game
amazing.
is like you're trying to escape. Is that like is it like a
Well, it's
huge
well, you're trying to solve a puzzle. So it's
okay.
not necessarily escape per se, but there's a room that is if you have epilepsy, you definitely can't do it. But it
Oh,
There's your
really?
warning.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's got
it
some
has
serious
strobe lights,
strobes. Yeah.
but it also has like bass to it and it flashes at different rates. And it's a camera that also shows your picture when the light flashes on the walls. So it's a very weird situation to go into. There's another room that's made completely of mirrors with a Hindu god in there, but you can see it from all angles. It's crazy.
It
It
sounds
is
awesome.
crazy,
It
but
sounds like
amazing.
totally my speed. Like,
Yeah,
What?
it's that
What
like
day?
I'm sure that I'm gonna like love that. Yeah, you know what? So I think I'm gonna try to come in on the 28th because like I think we're like booked because we got a room that wasn't in the we're not staying either in the Paris or the what is the other one, the Bali. So
Mhm.
like because I got a spot for Darren and I where it was like a 2-bedroom
Yeah.
like condo.
Okay, yeah.
You know, because we have a table through our network, but you know, so we're which I don't even know, frankly, if it's on Podcast Row. Like I don't know if it's a vendor table
They're
or
all
if it's a
together this year, though.
oh, they are. All
Well,
right.
they're all on the same floor, like together in a room, but it
I
might be
think it's
podcasters in the middle, is kind of what I was getting the vibe of.
Okay,
Mhm.
cool.
But I
Cool.
don't know.
We haven't seen a floor plan or anything,
Yeah.
but they told us the exhibitors and podcasts would be together this year.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah, like and I don't know. Like for all intents and purposes, I think the Cloud 10 iHeart one is in Podcast Row, but I don't know. You know, it's like I'll be floating around anyway,
Just
talking
show
to my
up.
friends.
We all
Yeah, for
always
sure.
are.
Yeah, it'll be awesome. So I saw you guys post about your awesome. I'm super excited about your presentation you guys are doing with Eric. Can you
We
tell me
are.
about it? Tell me a little bit about it. Because I just saw your post like before I jumped on here.
Well, it just happened. When did we get that email? Friday?
Yeah, we just found out. Yeah, because we were together when we got the email with the
Mm-hmm.
time frame that we're going to be doing a live.
Mhm.
And so we've just started the planning phase of it.
Yes. We invited Eric to
It
come on
sounds like
with
it's gonna be
us.
awesome. It's gonna be bright and early. You guys,
Yes.
Bright and
9:30. I'm
early.
like, whoa.
I think
Before
we're
people are
first ones on.
cranky.
I'm like, all right.
Well, I think we're the first ones on.
Oh, are we? Probably.
I think so because it
Yeah.
starts at 9.
Yeah, you guys are like bright and early. Yeah, like you guys are
Yeah.
cracking
That's
dawn.
fine.
Cracking dawn.
We get up early.
Yeah.
We get up
Hey, man.
Fine.
Yeah.
And it's
I'll
probably
be
better
there.
that
I'll be
way.
there.
So I could rip the Band-Aid off early in the morning and not even worry about it the rest of the day. I'm like, oh, it's done and over with now. I
Exactly.
just can talk to people.
That's true though. That is totally true. Like
There's
now
my-
you can like you're like off the hook.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll just have to do mimosas instead of wine that early.
Yeah. Or Bloody
Exactly.
Mary, get a little protein
Bloodies.
in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
bloodies are perfect for early morning goodness, you know.
Yeah. So we're going to cover the Moab newlywed murders because they
Mhm.
just named, well, I don't think they
They,
named them
I don't
yet,
think they, yeah.
but they've got a person of interest in the case, and we thought it's close enough to Nevada and it's pretty current. People are still kind of talking about it because it all happened during the Gabby Petito, Brian Laundrie stuff, and it kind of got pushed to the wayside when
It
Gabby's
definitely did.
stuff. So we want to
It very
bring
much
that back out.
got pushed to the side. Yeah, it
Yeah.
like very, very much got pushed to the side. Like I was convinced, Darren and I were both 100% convinced that Brian Laundrie killed them. Like
Oh,
we
yes.
were,
So
we
did I.
were like, there was no part. We thought that one of the girls, the one who actually worked in the co-op, was one of the, because there were 2 911 calls that were placed.
Mhm.
So one was a dude, and then the other was a woman. So we were convinced that it was her, and it was somebody that worked at the co-op.
Mhm.
And we were like, somehow Brian Laundrie caught wind of it, and like we had this whole thing played out in our in our brains, man. It was
Oh,
like,
yes.
yeah. So this is the way it went down. If the cops separated them, they of
Mm-hmm.
course hooked back up. They're like, well, whatever. They're not going to be checking, so I'll come pick you up. And then I don't think Gabby had anything to do with it, but I think that she might have been present when it happened. I mean, he
Oh.
was like we know at this point he was a murderer.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah,
what I
or
mean?
I
And like,
think it
what are they like?
was
People don't die in Moab like that.
No.
It's not some shit that happens. Like that, I don't believe in coincidences like that. You know what I mean?
I also thought that Brian lost his cool, killed the couple. Gabby saw it, and then he had to kill Gabby because she
Exactly.
saw it.
That's
So
it.
I thought of it that way as well.
That's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
she was there and like either caught wind of it or he told her after the fact.
Mhm.
You know, or she was there like in the van and like shit got crazy and he ends up killing these two women and Gabby's freaking out and like he's like, you can't say shit. He's like, you have to promise, you know, and then she was just like hysterical, which I could imagine her being, you know, just like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that, you know, and like you said, he just like that's what ended like her life. Like to me, frankly, it still makes the most sense. And the way they poo-pooed it so quickly.
Yes.
Like law enforcement.
They're like, no.
Yeah, it was very unsettling to me. I was like, what? That sounds like total bullshit. Like they're not gonna even look into it. Like, what are the odds that this guy
the same week,
dude, like right there. It was all like within like a day of each other. It's so that'll be fascinating. Like
it'll be interesting to see who they end up coming out with their person of interest / suspect.
Yeah,
because they'll have to be released soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's gotta be. It's gotta be. Yeah, so that'll be a fun show. That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Definitely.
We're excited about it.
Yeah, so we just released that we'll be doing that. We're excited for that. But what do you have going on? More importantly,
season 2?
Yeah, so we just dropped season 2 of Defense Diaries, which is so you guys know from my first case, like that was my dad's case and you know,
I know.
Melissa listened the whole way home.
I was very appreciative that you finally threw it on. So, you know, that had a weird, you know, like personal connection for me because obviously that had been a part of my life. But this particular case, I actually tried it. I was the trial attorney along with my dad, and that was like the only case I'd ever tried with my father. And then my wife Allison also tried it with us until she didn't. Which is all part of the story, but it was just an absolutely tragic, devastating case from the victim side of it, like just awful beyond words. You know, but from the procedural side of it, the trial side of it was just like unbelievable. It was like such a war. I think it's going to make for an amazing podcast just because like all of us true crime nerds are just going to be like, holy shit, you know, because it's like that kind of thing. And, you know, and I know that there's been some pods on that particular case. And I cannot remember what it's like Campfire or so, like there's one pod that I listened to that did an episode on the case and they just were like roasting me on that. And it was like, and I actually messaged them and they still never messaged me back. And I was like, hey, you know, and I came off, I was like, you know, I was like, hey, you know, I listened to your episode and I'm like, I said, I'd love to come on, you know, and talk about the case with you guys a little bit, you know, because I've got pretty thick skin from doing like the defense attorney work for a long time. So,
you would have to.
Yeah. It's like that kind of stuff doesn't really get to me, but, you know, the thing about that case is that everyone that's done the case, their source material has always been this book that was written by, and I talk about it a little bit in the first episode of this second season, this Todd Cooper, who was the crime beat reporter for the Omaha World Herald. And the guy was like, you know, he had a direct line to the state's attorney's office. Like they were leaking all the information to him. Like for the because the thing was litigated for 3 years. So it was a death penalty case. So it was as serious as you can get in a criminal case. And it really was a mystery type of case. This wasn't like there was definitive evidence anywhere at either of the crime scenes. And there was no real eyewitnesses that saw anybody. Now, as far as like the first set of murders, which took place in 2008, like this is in a real upscale neighborhood in Omaha, Nebraska, called like Dundee. It's like where all the doctors and lawyers and like professionals live. So, there's a lot of money in that neighborhood, and this is the kind of thing that just never happens in this neighborhood. So, obviously law enforcement took it very, very seriously. It was all hands on deck for that case. And, so they went in hard and they really investigated, and it ended up going cold. The first case, for 5 years, the case was cold, and they just couldn't get anybody. And they had 5 or 6 people that had seen this stranger walking around the neighborhood, because it was one of those types of neighborhoods, like, people that live there are going to notice somebody who doesn't live there and is walking around. And there were quite a few people and they all kind of had the same description of this guy. And, despite that, they just couldn't nail down a suspect. They couldn't really figure out a motive. It's because this sweet little boy was killed, this 11-year-old boy, for no reason, no apparent reason. And the housekeeper, so the cops didn't know which way to look. They didn't know, because typically that's the first thing they're going to look for is a motive. But that's always going to help them the motive drives them to the suspects, because that's a way that, law enforcement, a tool that they use to try to kind of narrow down, okay, well, was it a robbery? No. Was it, was it infidelity? No. Was it, somebody jealous? Was it rage? Was it money? Any of those things, and none of them fit. So
you got to get like the victimology of the person
totally
to figure out. But yeah, with a little boy and a housekeeper, well, there's not much to go on.
And they don't know, they being law enforcement, when they go in, whether or not the killer knew that Shirley Sherman, who was the housekeeper, was the wife or the mom, at the house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they don't necessarily know if the killer knew who was who there. They didn't know who the target was. They didn't know if Shirley Sherman was the target or Thomas Hunter was the target. So from their perspective, it was really tough for them to kind of like get a grasp on like why this happened. So. And then fast forward to 5 years later, another brutal double homicide takes place in not the same neighborhood, but another very nice neighborhood. And then they make this link between Creighton University. So because the young boy's father worked at Creighton, and the man of the second couple that was killed, the husband, he also worked at Creighton, and they both worked in the same department.
Oh, yeah.
So that connection right there, is they're like, okay, light bulb went off. They go to Creighton. They're like, we need the list of everybody in the last 20 years who has beef with Creighton, in this department, with the school in general. So from that, they got a large list, and then names got doled out to various cops. And then they started digging into these names. And then my client ended up being one of those names. And, I'm not going to give too much away about it, for the people that haven't heard of it. But, so that kind of leads them down the path to liking my guy for both of them. And, from there, that kind of the war started. But, it was very rare. Circumstantial evidence, it can be more powerful than direct evidence sometimes. There's kind of a misnomer out there that circumstantial evidence may not be as strong as direct evidence. That's just not true. A lot of times direct evidence could be eyewitness testimony, and a lot of times that's far more inconsistent than circumstantial evidence. People, when you're seeing something and you don't realize that a crime is being committed or is going to be committed, yeah, sure, you like took note of something, but you didn't necessarily commit everything to memory because you didn't think it was important at that time. You know what I mean? Which was the case with the first murders that took place. You had these like 5 people that all saw somebody who, because of the fact that the murder was discovered, very shortly after it occurred, when the dad comes home, people had it pretty fresh in their memory in terms of what they saw, but still, again, it's like, test yourself, like do one of those things where, you have the game on your phone where it gives you 15 things that you got to look at, and then the screen goes blank and you have to try to recollect seconds later what you just saw.
I would fail.
It's right. It's tough. I mean, most of us would. It's a really tough thing to do. So,
Wow.
so yeah, it's going to be a good season. It's going to be interesting, and I think people will enjoy it. And the thing that we're doing differently than any of the other pods that have done it is that they're finally going to get to hear what the defense was, because we put on a hell of a defense. It was like, for us, my client had, from the minute he retained us, always maintained that he didn't do it. So I'm, as his attorneys, we're obligated ethically to proceed as such, that he was innocent, and that was, how we approached the case. But we went after, the scientific side of it. We had a lot of scientific evidence that was very powerful that seemingly was ignored at the end of the day. But, a case like that, where you have a young innocent boy who's just adorable and has got his whole life in front of him, who's murdered, people want somebody to pay for that, and my guy was on the radar, and the thing took 3 years to get to trial, and they tried him in the press. So by the time we got to court, and it's like, obviously we filed motions for change of venue because there was no way he was going to get a fair trial there, which we lost, and it was like, it was a very challenging case, but it'll make for a very good true crime podcast for certain. So
I'm excited. I haven't started it yet. I'm still behind on season 1. I've got 2 episodes left. You know how it is when you have your own podcast, it's hard to listen to all the other ones.
Yeah.
I know. I will get caught up.
I know. I will get caught up. No, I'm saying I get it totally. And it's like, I'm that guy, and I think we were talking about this when we were in New Orleans. Like, I'll listen to, like, I'll start like my friends' pods, like your guys are, like, if I'm listening to an episode, typically what I do is I'll put my phone on, I'll slide it under my pillow, and so I listen to it there, and more likely than not, I'm falling asleep within 10 minutes. So then I'm going back, or when I'm driving, I throw the episode, so it's, no, dude, I get it. Trust me. It's, and that's kind of the thing about what we do. People kind of need a dedicated period of time to like listen to one of our shows, because we all run in 45 minutes to an hour and some change in terms of per episode, and that's kind of like a large chunk of time, because people aren't sitting down necessarily like they do to stream on Netflix or Hulu, where they're watching TV with podcasting. Podcasts are more, I'm at work and I'm listening, or I'm working out and I'm listening. Right. I'm walking my dog. I'm commuting.
With people not driving as much, I swear it makes a big difference.
Huge difference. Like if we could get the statistics on that, I would hazard to guess that like that's by far the most common place where podcasts are listened to is during commutes. Because I always get the people, which I'm sure you guys do. Oh, we've got like a 9-hour road trip and we want like a good pod to like go to work on, So it's like, So that's.
I did have a question just for you being a defense attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find it that your clients typically tell you the truth if they did the crime or not? Or do they still relatively just say, I'm innocent no matter what?
I'd say if I had to try to put a percentage on it, I would say that probably about 90% profess their innocence.
Really? I've always just wondered. I'm like, do people really tell their lawyers? Because, the confidentiality thing, I'm like, I still don't trust anyone, lawyer or not.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. And when you have a client come in, like if they're of the mindset, I'm going to try to get away with it, then obviously they're not going to come in and tell me that they did it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So what happens with that is when the discovery starts coming in, and I'm like, all right, so let's sit down, let's go through this discovery. This is what they have. We've got some serious problems here. And like, I never, and it depends, and I shouldn't say never, but a majority of the time, I'm never telling my clients, you have to tell me the truth. Tell me the truth. I need to know the truth in order to represent, because that's not how it works. Like if I'm going to come up with an alternative defense, and I don't want my client coming forward and telling me what they did or what they didn't do, because I can't then put them on the stand in order to have them testify in suborn perjury. I can't do that. Ethically, it's number one, it's a crime. Number two, ethically, I'm bound never to suborn perjury. So I can't have a client come in and spill their guts to me and then say, okay, well, I came up with a great defense and we're going to put it on, and I'm going to have you get on the stand and like subscribe to this defense that I just created. It doesn't work like that. That's not how it goes. You can't do that. So, and nor would I, so it's one of those things where typically what I ask a client is, tell me what the police are saying that you did. Like I couch it very carefully. What are they saying that you did? And then, because remember, when I'm first talking with the clients, number one, I haven't been retained at that point. Number two, I don't have the discovery. So I have no idea what the cops know or what they don't know. So I'm getting the story from them. And, obviously, if they know a lot more details than they should, you know what I mean? Like when they're telling me the story, if it's like just post arrest, if they've got a lot of details, then in my mind, I'm saying, all right, well, this guy seems to know quite a bit about what went down. So, like right there, I kind of have an idea of where they're at in terms of guilt or innocence. But, like 90% of the time, like cases, law enforcement doesn't miss that often. I mean, for as much, and that's not to say that there aren't tons and tons of innocent people that have been prosecuted and convicted, because there are. But when you're talking about millions of criminal cases, like 100,000 innocent people in prison is probably, 5%. You know what I mean? So it's like,
it doesn't happen a lot.
It doesn't happen a ton. A majority of times, law enforcement is pretty diligent. And if you're talking about like law enforcement from the local level, as opposed to like the federal government, like federal cases, the U.S. Attorney's Office are incredibly thorough. Like they rarely lose those cases because they take their time. Did you say that again? Sorry. It's my Apple Watch going insane. Did I say Siri?
No.
So yeah. So
she's just listening.
She's always.
You said federal, and they just automatically started.
Oh my God, that's so true. We are so on the grid.
We are,
but like with U.S. attorneys, like I'll get a call from a guy, and he'll be like, "Yeah, you know what? Like 2 FBI agents came to talk to me." He's like, "What can I expect?" I said, "Well, you're probably going to sit there for 2 years, because with federal cases, the feds do not rush into it. Because they take their time and they build like a bulletproof case. Whereas with state cases, they don't do the same thing. You're dealing with local police agencies. They don't have the resources of the federal government. They're trying to close cases. So it's a much different beast. So going into federal court, it's much tougher to win those cases from the defense side, specifically because they've done so much more in terms of preparing the case ahead of time before they make the arrest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a super long answer to your question, but,
no, I love it, because I've always wanted to know. I'm like, do you want to know the truth, or you're just like, hey, let's figure out what we could do. Tell me what I need to know and let's move on.
It depends. If it's a case like say, for instance, like Gacy, like the Gacy case, my father wanted to know the truth because in that particular case, what they had done is decided to go with the insanity defense. And when you go with the insanity defense as your defense, by operation of law, you are admitting that you committed the crimes. All right. So, and what you're saying is, yeah, I committed the crimes, but I could not comport my behavior to the requirements of the law. I could not control myself mentally. Like I was out of my mind. So in that particular circumstance, my father wanted to know. He wanted as many details as he could get in order to say, okay, this shows that my client had a compulsion, that he could not control his behavior. He could not comport to the law. He was completely normal all these other times in all other parts of his life, but had these moments in time where he just could not control himself. You know what I mean? So
Listening to your podcast, just listening to him talk, he's so nonchalant, like
oh my
it's
God.
going out to dinner. So in my mind, there is nobody normal mentally, like that has it together, that would speak like that. So I mean, I
Melissa, that was like the most, like, people ask me like what was the creepiest thing about him, and to me that was it. Like, to be completely devoid of anything that makes us humans, like in terms of like emotion or remorse or anything that even remotely is human in terms of
sympathetic, or like
any
where
of
you
those
understood
emotions,
someone else. No, he had
anything.
none
Yeah,
of that.
he had none of it. None
None
of
of
it.
it.
You know, and it was like, it's like you said, it was like he was ordering breakfast off a menu, just talking about killing people, and it was so off-putting. And like, that was what made, to me, you know, out of all the serial killers out there, and I know people say that there are a lot of serial killers that were, you know, extremely social, like BTK and, you know, Ted Bundy. They weren't like Gacy, though. Like, Gacy was like a whole different level of
monster,
being a monster, because he was truly out, not just with like in small settings. Like, he was throwing huge parties at his house, inviting politicians and lawyers and all these uppity ups, and all the while like murdering people constantly. You know, and he was just, to me, he was like the ultimate apex predator, you know, which made him, to me, the scariest of all time. There was just, it's like when you get later into the season, when I get into the trial, and I have one of the psychiatrists that my father had put on at trial, and he was trying to explain that there wasn't a category in the in you know, the DSM at that point. Like, I think they were on like DSM-3, you know, in terms of like mental diseases and disorders. Like, this guy was like, there didn't exist a category for him, because there was nobody who had been like him. So he literally came up with, like, Richard Rappaport, who was one of the psychiatrists that testified, literally came up with the category of borderline personality disorder. Like, that was his, and it was for Gacy, you know? So it was like that. And everyone was like giving him, like, everybody in his field was giving him shit. Like, what did you, oh, you just made some shit up. You know, it's like, how do we categorize somebody that has never been seen before? Like, you know, so yeah, from that side of it. And it was funny. I got, we got a review like recently, and it wasn't like, they gave us like a really good, like, Star-wise review, but they're like, I can't believe that Bob Motta believed that at the end of the day that defense was legitimate. And I'm like, well, number one, I never said that, but, you know, we all have to, like, sitting back, looking at it objectively, there was something wrong with him.
There was something wrong with him.
There was something that was different in terms of internally, in terms of his brain, that did not operate the way that the rest of our minds work, you know, and whether or not that was a question of him being able to control his compulsions, I don't know, you know, I mean, that's the super challenging thing with like an insanity plea case. It's a very hard defense to win, because we know so little about the human brain. You know, I mean, we really do. It's like, we know we're only using 10% of our brains, you know, and we don't know shit about it.
And we know a lot more now than we did back in Gacy's time.
Way more, and we still don't know shit, you know?
Yeah. So Lou said, how hard is it to build a defense of not guilty due to mental illness when the defendant has no diagnosis before the crime?
It's extremely tough. It's extremely tough. You know, because if you've got somebody that has been diagnosed with, like, you know, schizoid, you know, like some kind of schizophrenic type disorder, you know, and there's like a history of it, you know, where you've got somebody that's basically flown under the radar mental illness wise, or has never sought treatment. and you're going in with it like that. And when I say that it's tough to sell it to a jury, because that's ultimately who you have to try to convince that this person is mentally ill and could not control their behavior. So it's very difficult because if you don't have that background, going into it, it just makes it seem like it's a bullshit excuse. Like the guy's malingering, like he's just coming up with, and Gacy, was a smart guy. It's like Bill Kunkel tells a story, who was the prosecutor. He's like, yeah, when he had a cell, we saw that he had a like the DSM in there, and they had highlighted the insanity defense in there. I'm like, so, and like as soon as the first interview with Gacy, where he starts spilling his guts, he starts throwing in the Jack Hanley bullshit. Like, he's like, I don't know what happened, but Jack Hanley does. They're like, well, who's Jack Hanley? He's like, the other guy that lives in my brain, So he like immediately started forming what he felt would be a way to kind of get away with it, And ultimately, at the end of the day with that case, it's like as soon as the state had one of their experts say that in Illinois, if somebody is found innocent by reason of insanity and they're hospitalized, if they are deemed to be cured, they are released. The state has no authority. As soon as that came out of that guy's mouth, every person on the jury is like,
no.
Fuck no. No. There is a 0% chance we're letting this guy go. So it was a very, very tough case.
We always thought it was. Oh, so keep going.
No,
this is a new. Dude, I was like, this is a new subject. Whitney and I always talked about how the insanity defense is very, very difficult to get, to make people believe that. Except for Lori Vallow, she somehow gets the insanity defense out of nowhere, and I'm like, there's way crazier people than Lori Vallow.
Totally. I mean, at the end of the day, that boils down to a jury.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It really does. And it's like when you've got 33 victims.
Yeah, there's no one wants you out.
No one wants you out. And there's a lot of an eye for an eye there. It's like, they called him the poster boy for the death penalty. And, it's like if anyone deserves people who are even anti-death penalty, they're like, well, if they're gonna use the death penalty, that would be the guy to use it on, So it was like, it was way too many victims. They were all just young men and boys. And it was, that was an extremely difficult case from a defense attorney's perspective, and it was like, I would always get the questions like growing up, like, oh, how the hell could your dad represent him? I'm like, number one, like, I hate when people ask that question. I'm like, do we want to live in a country where we don't have trials? Because when you're suggesting, how do you defend? Well, if somebody doesn't defend these people, that means, because you don't get to pick and choose who gets a trial. Everyone gets a trial. That's the Constitution. So, like for people to ask that question, I'm like, what you're suggesting is that we just forego trials, that we let people get arrested. They don't have a trial, and we just trust that the police got it right every single time. Bless you.
Thank you.
So, which obviously cannot happen, so, and it's like, and I forget who I was. I think I was doing something in the conversation I was having with Charlie Worrell of Crime Lines. I did this episode with her, and I was talking about, it never gets talked about. What about prosecutors that might have the wrong guy?
Yeah.
And it's like, how many shows have you watched where they've had just unmitigated exonerating evidence, and these state's attorneys just refuse to acknowledge that he's not the guy? I'm like, what world do you live in to where you can't admit that you made a mistake? Because I mean, they're only going off the evidence that they're provided. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't blame them for trying somebody when law enforcement says, this is our guy, this is the evidence we have, it's very strong. The state looks at it and they say, okay, we have enough to get a conviction here. But if at some point you realize it's not the right person, I think it's their obligation to take a step back and say, hey, it's like,
you would think that would be the rule.
You would hope. It's like, are you guys watching? So I listened to the thing about Pam, but I've been watching it on Peacock as well. And Yeah, I felt so amazing yesterday when I watched the episode where Joel Schwartz, who's the defense attorney, like wins that bench trial, and they show him in the room after he wins, and that's what it's like to be a defense attorney representing an innocent person, like that, like where he's like crying because it's like the pressure that you feel to do this job. Like that's why I always say the hardest client, the worst client to have is the innocent person, because at the end of the day, my God, if I've got a guy who I just believe with all my heart is innocent, and the jury is just completely ignoring the evidence and they end up convicting him, that is an awfully hard thing to live with on a daily basis for me. It's like, my God, this guy is now in prison for the rest of his life, and I feel like I didn't do my job. And there's, you know what I mean? Because it is very hard to win on appeal. Like that whole thing was, well, we'll just appeal it.
Yeah.
Not like you do not often get things overturned on appeal. There has to be absolutely smoking gun evidence. And like I know you guys watch enough Discovery ID and all that shit. You know how hard it is to get things overturned. We might
watch a little bit.
Just a little.
So it's
not like, very much.
And it's those cases where you're like talking to the TV, where you're like, oh my God, like how is this judge ignoring that shit? And it happens all the time. So it's
so
like
much pressure on you.
Oh, man,
I do not like high pressured situations.
And it's so different. And it's like the prosecutors and the defense have different types of pressure. The state has the pressure of they're representing the people of the state, of whatever state that they're in, and they're trying to advocate for victims, and they're trying to find justice. But so is the defense. This concept that we're not all in the same search for justice is absurd. My job is if they've got strong evidence, more likely than not, they're going to get the conviction. Justice will oftentimes prevail. What we want to make sure is that justice is prevailing and that it's being done properly. I mean, that's really what the goal, and it should be the goal for everybody. Like no matter which way it goes,
What is the way you said it? And the first time you came on our podcast and the first time we met you, you described being a defense attorney as policing the police.
Exactly. Which is
that is
the
most beautiful way to put it out there, because everyone sees you as the bad guy.
Right. Right.
But you're not.
We're not. We're really not. And, and that's not to say that there's not shitty defense attorneys, because there are.
I'm sure there are.
But there's also shitty prosecutors.
There's also shitty cops.
Like every prosecutor.
There's also shitty judges. Like there's shitty people in general.
There are shitty people in every profession on the planet, so that's just a fact. So, yeah, like the way that I try to explain to people so that they maybe have a better understanding what really the role of a defense attorney is, because, like I said, more often than not, the cops typically have it right, so what my job then becomes, as opposed to trying to win the case at trial, is I police the police, meaning that I am looking at what they did in terms of their investigation, in terms of their searches, in terms of their interviews, in terms of everything that they did prior to it becoming an actually litigated case, to make sure that they followed the constitutional provisions that the Supreme Court of the United States had said, these are the rules that you have to follow. You cannot search unless you have probable cause. This is what we have determined to be probable cause in certain situations. It can't be a free for all, because like when people are like, oh, he got off on a loophole. It's not a loophole. It's not a loophole. What it is it's the Constitution of the United States. It's all of our Fourth Amendment rights. And like, believe me, we all want our Fourth Amendment rights intact. And if defense attorneys did not exist, calling the cops, because if you don't understand at this point, like I have to tell you, the last 5 to 7 years in terms of what's come out about how cops are, and this is not to say, like, I respect the hell out of what they do, because they are out there putting their lives on the line, and it's an incredibly thankless job. That being said, there are tons of cops out there that do the job the wrong way, and so what we do is we try to make sure that they did it the right way. And if they did it the right way, they've got nothing to worry about. I'm not going to win a motion to suppress if they did it the right way. if they had a guy in a room for, 46 hours without eating and without sleeping and are interrogating him and get him to the point where he's making like a confession that's just not true, I need to vet that. You know what I mean? I mean, there's plenty of examples now with like just the vast amount of documentaries that are out there of how often that happens, because, and frankly, that's why we named this season Tunnel Vision, because it worked for everybody. It worked for, if my client was the guy, he certainly had tunnel vision because this thing spanned 13 years if he's the guy. If he wasn't the guy, it certainly applies to the prosecutor, because as soon as Anthony Garcia was the guy that they liked, that was it, tunnel vision. They didn't look at anybody else. The investigation stopped. Same with the police, tunnel vision. Same with us. I mean, like the title for it was perfect because it applied to everybody in the case, theoretically. You know what I mean? So,
and I love the name, by the way.
Oh,
I do too.
Yeah.
I know you said that was the first time you guys had like came out with something a bit
and
different.
Well, because we wanted to, with this season, like what I'm hoping to do is basically I want our listeners to act as the jury. Like I really want them to come with, because like I'm not going to do it like Making of a Murderer did, where they were basically, we all loved that. When that dropped on Netflix, I was like, that was riveted. Like I like binged that in a day.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I immediately followed, especially when season 2 came out, I immediately followed Catherine
Zellner, yeah,
on Twitter because she's constantly posting updates. Totally. I was like, I'm going to set notifications. I've got to make sure I know everything about this case from now on.
Yeah,
it's a crazy one,
man. And like, so when I finished season 1, I'm like, okay, they must have omitted a bunch of evidence. Like, there's no way the prosecution could have gotten a conviction with that evidence that they showed in this documentary. So of course I dug in and I found that there was all kinds of other evidence. And I'm like, man, I'm kind of disappointed that they kind of only showed one side of the case, because they wanted to couch it as if Stephen Avery wasn't guilty, which I think is a little disingenuous. I still love the documentary. And by the way, the DNA expert that Kathleen used is actually the DNA expert that I employed in Garcia, which was before Kathleen had Stephen Avery's case. So
you had him first.
So he's
the OG DNA expert.
He is the OG. He is the OG DNA guy. And what made Carl Reich brilliant is that he could break down DNA so that we could all understand it. Because like it's a complicated area of science, and if you don't have because it's like it's the peaks and alleles that are challenging with it. It's not like you can just kind of look at it and it's intuitive, because it's not at all. So you have to have somebody who can break it down in terms of a jury actually being able to understand it, in order for that person to be effective. And Carl Reich was a genius at it. Like, that guy could just break it down. It's like, because my stupid ass is like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's
with the DNA.
mumbo jumbo talk.
Yeah, like that's a lot of science words. And and like Allison, my wife, was like, she had a great grasp on it. She was like going to be handling the DNA side of the case, and then they removed her from the case, which I'll get into in the season, which was insane.
I'm excited to hear about that part.
So because she's such a pit bull.
Is she coming to Vegas?
I think
because I want to meet her so bad.
I think if she's not coming to Vegas, she's definitely going to come to Dallas.
Okay.
I'm
so excited to meet her.
Yeah. Yes. Like, unfortunately, like, we've got kids.
Get it.
So
I get it. We have kids too.
We got rock, paper, scissor that stuff.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's why my husband stays home for most things as well. So I get it.
Yeah, it's like, we need that though, in order for us to for them to give us the gift to be able to kind of get out there and do that. So
they're all
huge.
So sweet to us.
They are. It's like without them, it would be really tough to do what we do. So but I'm hoping, and I think that people will actually, because Allison's going to be in this season quite a bit, obviously, as my trial partner. So we'll be hearing from her and I have a feeling people are going to like her an awful lot. So
I already like her.
Yeah,
Yes. If you like her, we like her.
Yeah, and she's a badass woman, man.
I
You know
love
what I mean?
badass people.
She takes no shit, and she's all of 4'11", and she's a little pit bull, man.
Oh.
So she's.
I
She's
knew she
shorter
was tiny.
than you.
Yeah,
she's shorter than me.
I didn't know she was tiny.
She's tiny. Well, she'd kill me if I said she was 4'11". She's very adamant she's
5
5 foot, but I'm
5 foot flat. Listen, us short people get every half inch we can.
That's right. So yeah, she gets pissed about that. So yeah, so that's kind of where that's at.
My husband is coming to Vegas. He wants to make sure that that's well aware. So
yeah, good. Yeah, it's I'm excited. Like, so this is my first year doing, because we were, I think we had just dropped like last year's CrimeCon, so it wouldn't have made any sense for us to be here. So it's going to be our first one, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see all my friends in the industry, and to see my friends. I'm going to totally be there for you guys when you guys are doing your presentation. I'll have a million questions for you. It'll almost be like you guys planted me in the audience. I'll be like, "Oh, I have some questions for you."
That was like Justin at the True Crime Podcast Festival. He tells us, "Oh, I'm going to heckle from the front row and throw tomatoes." I'm like,
"Yeah."
That was our first live ever.
And the first time we really get to meet and like have a conversation with the grandfather of true crime. He's like, "I'm going to give you hell on your first live show." We're like, "Great. This is excellent, Justin. We're so excited to have you here."
Thanks, man.
He was fine. He only made a couple quick comments.
Yeah, no,
my
you
husband
guys
said,
rocked it. You guys were great.
Said that Allison can join the spouses club.
Nice. Definitely.
Yeah.
Spouses of a podcasting.
Yeah, I mean, that should probably be a reality TV show.
Oh my God, it could.
Justin or Josh would be all over that.
Josh would be all over it.
There's no question. He's a big fan.
Thanks to him, I am now binging Real Housewives of Dallas. I started at.
Oh my God.
It seems tame. Okay, much more tame than the Salt Lake City women.
I started Salt Lake City because that's where he told me to start, and it is nuts.
It's
Allison
nuts.
has gotten me and I fought it.
Don't fight it.
Like, no, it's not even the Housewives. It's like way worse. It's like,
is it 90 Day Fiance?
No, it's Temptation Island, which is I
don't watch that one yet.
I can't even I just can't understand like how that's even like a thing. Like, do you know the concept of that?
No, I don't know that. I know all of the other ones though.
It's insane. There's 12 couples that go in under the premise that they're going to split up into 2 different houses with all the women and all the men. And then they inject 12 single women and 12 single men to see if these people, like, if their relationship can if they can withstand.
Oh, that's crappy.
But what makes it even worse is that they're televising or they're recording all of it. And then they'll have these little fireside things. Well, where they're showing like the significant other, what they're doing in the other house.
All that's edited crap.
I know,
it's all taken out of context.
It totally is.
That's
why this is why I didn't like reality television.
It's the worst. And I keep trying to tell Allison, I'm like, the producers are like, even with the Housewives, and there's like, the producers trust me, like, and for the seasons that are like 8, 9 in, obviously the people are kind of an established character, so they're not having to do as much pushing in terms of kind of storylines as that they need,
changing their personality completely.
Exactly. So we're going to introduce this guy and you're going to be really interested into it. It's like that kind of shit's just kind of fake, but it's whatever.
Tell me you married an introvert without telling me you married an introvert.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Our relationship is great, but it's too many people in the room. He would leave immediately.
Yeah. It's like Nina. Nina is like the classic introvert, which I've always found her to be. Like, she just like is not like a huge fan of big crowds of people. It's like
Nina is the most lovely human being I've ever met in my life.
She's amazing, but she like not a huge fan of crowds. It's not her vibe.
I get it.
Man,
I mean, well, I don't get it because I like crowds.
I have to rest for days after big crowds. I
That's what
like
Nina's
it.
like.
I
Nina's
do have
always
to
like,
rest.
yeah,
Yes.
she's
I
like,
can't be
I need
on
to.
all the time.
Right. It's hard. It's hard. It
Mhm.
is.
Melissa is just now bouncing back from our weekend.
Yes.
Yeah.
It takes me days to
I
like.
could tell you like even got physically ill. Like you got like,
Yes.
picked up some kind
Well,
of
that's
little
because
cold.
Whitney gets me
I'm
sick.
sorry. I get sick once a year, and it just happened to be that weekend, and I
Of
didn't even know I
course.
was sick.
Well, better
No,
then than like CrimeCon. You know what I mean?
Very
Yes.
Yeah. It's like if you had to pick your weekend to do it, that would have been the weekend to you know,
Exactly.
feel a little under the weather.
Mhm.
So because like the obligations weren't nearly as like
Yeah.
daunting.
No.
You know?
We're
So-
vitamin C from here until CrimeCon.
Yes.
we are.
zinc and elderberry as well.
Zinc and
elderberry,
elderberry.
I'm a huge fan of that combo. It's like I like since one of my friends told me about that, like pre-pandemic, like about the elderberry. I've
Really?
been like, yeah. Like I've always like I always knew about the zinc from like Airborne, like that product
Oh
out
yes,
there.
yes.
I always knew zinc, but like the elderberry was kind of new, and it like when they were first telling me about it, like you couldn't find it anywhere.
Yeah, because it was
Mhm.
like a hit a couple years ago.
Exactly. Like
people were obsessed with it.
right when the pandemic kind of
Yes.
hit, you know,
Mhm.
people are like, "Oh, this elderberry shit works."
Look
you know?
at it.
And it's
Yeah.
like I've always been of the mindset that like there is some kind of natural remedy always available like to us on the earth without it, you know, but we just might have to figure out what it is. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like I think that there's like for every virus or illness that there's some kind of natural remedy that exists that the earth provides. You know, I don't know if that's true or not, but I've always felt like it was. You know, so
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever. I'm kind of big on the homeopathic shit.
I
That's
love
all
it.
right.
Yeah,
That's
you
all
know.
right. I'll take all the like organic, not organic, but you know, all the earth given things.
Yeah,
You know, your body will
totally.
expel what you don't need.
Exactly.
As long as it keeps me healthy, I really don't care. And a voice, because
Exactly.
it's really hard to be a podcaster without a voice.
It's
Yes.
so hard. It's so
And also
hard.
to be in like the loudest city in America without a
was
voice.
loud.
It was so hard to talk to y'all over the weekend when
Oh,
I'm like
man.
squeaking out
I bet
very,
you were like
very little sounds
felt like you were yelling, but we barely
all
heard
the
you.
time.
Yeah, it
All
was
the time.
it was super loud in New Orleans. And you know, I mean, they were kind of like my friends that live there were, you know, they were happy because it's like New Orleans has been like the rest of the country has been like you know, like the zombie apocalypse basically, like just dead.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it was like my buddy who lived there, who you guys met, Lance, who that story I walked into when I came back from the bathroom, like that.
I
We're
was
not
like,
going to
"What's-"
bring it up here, but I was like, wow,
Oh.
like how did
Oh.
this story start?
About his case.
I was like, that
Yeah.
Lance was telling us. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
I was like, wow.
It was a little dark.
Yeah, I was like, how
little
did it get
dark.
here? So, but yeah, like he was just like, man, like seeing like the people out again was, you know, really, really nice. So yeah, so it's good. I'm glad we're getting kind of back to normal.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
Well,
I
there
think
was a
we're
ton
all-
of people down there, so I'd say that's a little bit back to normal.
definitely.
I don't think it was as busy as it could be, but it was good to see people out in the world again.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I've been there so many times. Yeah. Like I've seen it 10 times as packed as that, like where you cannot move, like on, like, if you're walking down Bourbon Street, it's like just packed with humanity, like a
Yeah.
sea of humanity. So
Mhm.
yeah, it was definitely not at capacity or even close, but it was nice to see that they released some people out, you know. I mean, it was definitely because I had been down there like kind of in the middle of the pandemic, and it was just like a ghost
Like
town.
dead.
Yeah, it
Oh.
was so weird. It was surreal, you know. It's kind of like when I walked around and like I drive down in the city of Chicago, like in the Loop, the business district during the middle of pandemic. Nothing. It was so weird. You know, it's like
Oh,
watching
that
one
is
of those
weird.
movies like where, you know, you
It's like
see
The Walking Dead.
like The Walking Dead, like vegetation's growing on the buildings and shit, you know,
Aw.
cracking through the pavement, and it's like, holy shit, man. Yeah, so yeah, I'm glad we're getting back to normal, and I'm really looking forward to CrimeCon. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Same. So everyone who is in we're at an hour. We appreciate it,
Mhm.
Bob. I know
No
you've got
problem.
things to do tonight.
No
I'm
problem.
glad we were able to finally have a conversation without technical difficulties.
Yes, it was nice.
Everyone go subscribe to Defense Diaries. Listen to start with season 1. You have to start at episode 1 and go through. Is it 33 or 34?
So it's technically 33, but episode 33 was 3 parts. So it's really 36 episodes.
Okay.
Okay.
But
But
we
you have
call
to
it
start at 1 or
do.
you'll be totally screwed up.
Yeah,
I'm at 10.
Yeah, it's definitely, you've got to start at the beginning otherwise, because it's densely packed, and it's not a casual listen, it's not like one of those things where, because like all of us, like if I'm walking my dog and I'm listening to like one of your guys' episode and like I start thinking like of anything, like I'm walking my dog, I'm listening to my pod, and I like a thought comes into my mind. I start thinking, and like I will think for 7-8 minutes, and then realize I didn't hear anything that I was listening to in the pod,
same.
just because my mind was wandering. So
wanders.
it's like, it's like that's one of our challenges in what we do. So then I have to go back and re-listen. So it's kind of that kind of pod where
you got to pay attention, because there's lots of moving parts, lots going on.
Lots of moving parts.
And I'm not going to spoil
and whoever,
it.
I don't know who said that. Don't spoil it.
I'm not going to spoil it, but there are some really big revelations.
Yes.
That come out in season 1 alone.
Yeah, like of a really old case. That like we actually discovered new shit. So it was pretty amazing.
Yes. That would have completely obliterated the case.
Yes. It would have been a nightmare. It would have been an absolute nightmare scenario.
Yeah. So start at 1, listen through. I'm excited to get to season 2. I've got to finish season 1 because I'm ready. I'm on 31.
But I'm too anxious to start season 2 because I want to know.
Yeah, it's good. It's like, look, it's not going anywhere, Melissa.
That's true.
I mean? It's like it'll be there for you, waiting gently. Oh,
there's Eric.
Eric popped in. What's up, man? We were talking about you. Were your ears ringing? And it was all.
They're
good
always
stuff.
ringing.
Always ringing. Yeah.
Do you guys say ringing or burning? Like I've had this debate.
Burning.
I think I'm a burning guy too. Like Alice and I, when we first met, like we actually we were in a bar having that debate. Because I think we both said the opposite. She said her ears were ringing. I said they were burning. So she went and took a poll of like the people in the bar.
She likes
just asking, do you say ringing? If somebody's talking about you, do you say your ears are ringing or burning? So it was.
I've honestly never said either of them.
Well, you will now.
I know. Now I'm like, what do I say? What am I gonna say?
You better pick a side right now.
I better.
Bob and I are burning.
Your guys' side.
Yeah, I mean,
it's burning. It's burning. It's what it is.
Join the dark side of the force. It's the way to go. Yes. All right, you guys. I love you.
Thank
you for having me.
Love you. Thanks, Bob.
Bye.
And I will see you guys in Vegas, baby.
Less than a month. We'll see you soon.
All right. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.